In this video, I'm going to be taking Race Sim Studios' recently released monster of a 1970s Formula 1 car for a blaze around the Nordschleife. And I'm going to tell you why this car is an absolutely phenomenal vehicle to drive, and if you're passionate about driving simulated race cars, why you need to get this for yourself, because it's going to absolutely tickle your pickle. Welcome back to the Gamer Muscle YouTube channel, and thank you everyone that's clicked the like button, and thank you everybody that's subscribed and supported the channel recently. It's very much appreciated. So on the screen here you can see we've of course got Content Manager installed for Assetto Corsa. You really need to get Content Manager for Assetto Corsa, as well as Shader Patch if you want to really enjoy it. Dead simple to install, loads of guides there, and 100% worth it. AC will absolutely blow your mind. But as you can see, it's part of the Content Manager stuff, and part of having this mod, we've got this camera panning around here and allowing us to just really enjoy the incredible visuals and beauty of this car model. And there's some really notable things worth pointing out before we actually get in and drive this delight. There's some things worth pointing out. Race Sim Studios have done a really good job with all those additional details. You notice all the little wings, or the throttle connection to the engine. You can't see the driver at the moment because the driver's not in the car, but all these things are animated and controllable and just go together to make it look phenomenal. If you're watching a replay of your drive, you'll be able to see like the driver moving his feet and his hands properly and everything, gear shifting properly, the little connection rods to the engine all moving. If you're into admiring your one lap that you did without dying, kind of RBR enjoyment of the drive that you did. The car model just looks phenomenal. The texturing looks great. The way it picks up the light, fantastic. Also worth noting is the fact that this car comes with a milk churn on the back and a fully exposed radiator. In fact, I'd say from behind, this vehicle actually looks like someone's just off to a car boot sale and they've just stuck everything that they plan to sell in the back of the vehicle. Obviously completely safe, because in the 1970s safety was the of paramount. 1970s racing, safety was what they were concerned about. So it's worth saying with this car, you do get two tyre choices here. You've got the groove tyres and slick tyres. Now, with this spec of car in this era, they didn't have the slick tyres, I don't believe, until like 1973. So if you want to be authentic, you probably want to go with the groove tyres. If you want to have a little bit more bite, a little bit more punchiness, and an easier to drive car in some ways, well, harder to get the most out of it, but easier grip wise, then you want to go for the slick tyres. I think if you're racing with friends and you're racing online, the slick tyres are what you probably want to go with. Both actually offer quite an interesting challenge. So the groove tyres, you will just be sliding around a lot. You'll have to pay a lot more attention to the roll of the vehicle and then the mass of the vehicle, making it keep going. You're going to have to preemptively brake a lot more with the groove tyres. You're really going to need to know the track a lot more with the groove tyres, whereas the slick tyres allow you to just absolutely cane it and be a little bit more inconsiderate with the vehicle. Because I'm inconsiderate and I like to attack, I'm going to go with the slick tyres. I'm not sure what I'd say is most fun. I'd say both are an interesting challenge. Maybe start with the slicks, or maybe start with the grooves. It depends how much you hate yourself. Also worth noting, you can obviously change all the setup stuff, but the default setup out of the box is really quite neutral. I found moving the brake bias a little bit further back from the default is more suited to me. I prefer to be able to get on the brake and have the back come around rather than to get on the brake and just get understeer. Though the brake bias by default on this is actually quite neutral, especially if you're using the weight of the vehicle. You might want to just leave the brake bias as it is. The gearing of the car, for 1960s style racetracks, or sort of the more drawn out racetracks, especially the long straight or the long parts of tracks like the Nordschleife, you're probably going to want to increase the gear ratios a bit so that you can get a higher top speed out of the car. On here, maybe like a 2 or 3 clicks actually. Vintage Monza, for example, you're going to need even more because the oval section is absolutely mental. In fact, you've got to drive this car at Vintage Monza. It's fantastic. But if you're driving on tracks like modern race tracks, you're probably fine with the default gear ratios, but that's worth considering. Other than that, I'm going to take some fuel out, and we're going to get on the track, because this is so fun to just drive. This car's so fun to drive. Oh, also of note, worth saying, there's a Game of Muscle car skin that you can get from Race Department if you want to be a fanboy of this channel, which no one does, so no one's going to download that. But there we go. We only need like 32 litres of fuel. Obviously, a V8 engine is highly fuel efficient, because that was another concern in the 70s, was the environment. So let's get on the track. Let's get in the car. You need a H pattern. You need a H pattern for this car to really fully enjoy it. Another thing worth pointing out with this vehicle, engine sounds absolutely phenomenal, and you've got a really nice bassy kick sound for the sort of burn off of the fuel coming out the exhaust pipe, which is actually really quite immersive whilst you're driving. Let's go onto the track. Now I am using, of course, here you can see we've got the LG OLEDs, 55-inch OLED screens. Obviously it's a budget setup. I don't want to intimidate people with ridiculous YouTuber sim racing equipment. So we've got the 3 OLEDs set up with G-Sync, which is amazing, and I'm using the Fanatec Podium direct drive wheel, and I'm using an OMP Trecento steering wheel. With this vehicle, actually, I think in real life, I believe it would probably have, they probably were using a 270mm wheel rim, maybe 300, I'm not sure. It's sort of in that weird crossover period from larger wheels to the smaller wheels that you get in Formula cars, and obviously well before Formula wheels, like, you know what I mean, square wheels. But here we go. Absolutely phenomenal. Driving through the German countryside here. Hopefully you guys can see the track clearly in the video. I've set the time of day to morning, which means that the Nordschleife is covered in shadows from the trees. Should be visible, hopefully. Hopefully the contrast is there. Hopefully my camera settings are right. I've filmed my monitors using a camera, so sometimes it's a bit hit or miss to actually get the quality from it for you guys. But woo, there we go. So as you see, with the slick tyres, you get into these nice little slides that allow you to shuffle the vehicle through the corner, and it's so pleasurable because, as we always say with the Assetto Corsa, oh no! That's how you enter that corner. This one's a very well built car. As I always say with the Assetto Corsa, it's one of the few driving simulators that really allows you that play at the limit, and that it really does have that kind of grippy feeling of a tyre that it goes away, but then the grip comes back like you would expect from rubber on a tarmac surface, and that is fairly crucial when it comes to vintage vehicles like this, where they can be at times a little bit unforgiving. You will definitely benefit with this vehicle from having a direct drive wheel, or at least something like a T300. I think these types of vehicles are really quite tricky and difficult to drive if you're using, like say like a Logitech wheel, though you should still be able to drive it. You're probably going to be in for a much harder time than those people that are fortunate enough to have CSL DD's direct drive wheels. Or as I say, even like a T300, where you get that extra bit of force and detail, which allows you to really feel where the tyres are at. Here we go. We've got a nice little bit of traffic here. I've just set the game to track day mode here in Assetto in Content Manager, so we can have some cars to admire from behind. Adds to the spectacle and the view. Now, in terms of things to watch out for with this car, we did about 6 hours of live streaming with it when it first came out. This car is actually, so I drove the 1973 Lotus, I think it is, in Assetto. It's probably the closest car in Assetto Corsa to this. I'm being punted by the AI. Calm down, matey. This car actually doesn't seem to be as affected by the curbs as much as the 1970s Assetto Corsa stock Lotus, but I think that's because this car is higher off the ground, and as a result it's a lot less flat feeling, and this car still has quite a bit of roll to it, or it feels like there's a lot of suspension roll, which in my mind in many ways actually makes it more pleasurable to drive, less direct, harder to be precise, but more satisfying when you actually hook up corners and you get the most out of it. There's definitely a very specific sort of flow that you have to get into with this vehicle to really be getting the most out of it. And I found when I was first driving it, hello matey, my tendency, let's get around the outside here, my tendency was to sort of overdrive it, over wrestle it, and the car will really start to chew you out quite a bit if that's what you do. If you try and drive it how it doesn't want to be driven, you could do that. It can be fun in some ways, but it's a lot more pleasurable and a lot more relaxing. Bloody hell. The AI there just jabbed his brakes. We recovered it, it's fine. A little bit of grass. a lot more relaxing once you get into the flow of the vehicle and work with the car as much as possible. And I think that's one of the things with the older vehicles as opposed to new cars. Newer vehicles, modern race cars, you can in many ways quite productively in terms of lap time, you can actually drive on top of the vehicle, like you can really push the vehicle as you want to push it, a lot more than having to work with the vehicle. Vintage cars, the more you try and drive on top of the vehicle and tell the vehicle what to do that it doesn't want to do, the worse time you have. But the more you work with it, the happier she'll be, and the happier your drive will be, and also the faster your lap times will be. This is very much, probably the same with all cars, but it's very much a smooth is fast. Unfortunately, I'm Jack the Ripper on the accelerator and brake pedal, so I'm never very fast. As we get some sparks there, go down through the gears. You will also probably want to be heel and towing with this car. I mean, it'd be criminal not to heel and tow with this, wouldn't it, really? But it is actually quite forgiving if you don't heel and tow. I think Assetto Corsa actually is one of the more forgiving sims for gear shifting. Like you can downshift with the H pattern very aggressively without the rear popping out too much, without giving you too much issues. Ain't making that, matey. I wanted to get the pass in there and I ran out of track. So unless you're going really quickly through the gears, especially from the third to second and second to first, you're probably fine with even shifting pretty bad, though you might do a bit of damage to the engine. It's quite easy to control. I've got to get past this guy. Look at those shadows on the darting across in the vehicle, and the shadows through the trees as well. Gorgeous. Really satisfying once you got the car slightly turned in on this and you dab the brake and you nose the front of the vehicle in. Oh my god, I would 100% do this in real life. I would not be absolutely pooing myself. You can't fit two through there. Maybe you can, and we just did. Oh, he's still battling me. We're on a track day, mate. Calm down. Woo! So it's really weird with this vehicle how you go from like states of zen and comfort to absolute manic panic and terror. And I can only imagine if you play this in VR, that'll be magnified even more. Now, it's also worth saying, and something I found whilst we were racing this in our live streams. Subscribe to the channel, by the way, guys, if you want to catch us live, and also on Twitch if you want to catch us live. Oh, why are you braking too early, matey? That's not the break point there. So, let's get back on the track here. Hopefully, I've got damage turned off. Well, I just killed people there. I wasn't expecting the break in there from the AI. It's my excuse. One of the things I have found is that if you go into... you'll find that you need to use first gear for very slow corners. Especially if you've increased the gear ratios, obviously for faster tracks, and you've got to increase the gear ratios for all of the... you've increased all the gear ratios for all the gears. You will. I found myself using first gear a lot more than I would with other vehicles. Maybe that's just a common thing with this era of car. So that just surprised me. Using first gear where I otherwise wouldn't, and then that kind of makes you feel like you're in the wrong gear on the H pattern in a weird way. When you're not, it's just that you're using the gears to different amounts. Quite nicely though, RSS have done a good job with the engine sound, so you can feel, you can hear if you're, see like that, we're clearly not using the RPMs, and that's really nice. And that's one of the really important things of having a good engine sound. And actually, that big crash and slide is probably a good example of another thing to be aware of, and that is if you do slide the tyres with this vehicle, you will actually, you'll bake them off. If you have like quite a big aggressive spin or multiple huge lockups, you will have absolutely winkled the wheels. And you'll find that the car then becomes really very hard to drive, but still easier than iRacing. So there is that. Right. Oh, look at the flames coming out of that. You could just see it because of the shadows. Dab it in through there. I definitely think though, if my out of drivers' cars, can't we fit through here? Out of cars to like drive, like, you know, your goal is to have an experience of driving a vehicle and playing with a vehicle at the limit, and you know, you don't even have to be in a race, just on a track, playing with the physics of a vehicle, rolling it about. This car and this type of car and this era of Formula car is absolutely amazing. If you're into driving, like, I don't know why on Assetto Corsa you have all these people doing all these cruise servers, and they're all driving boring road cars. It's like, guys, what are you doing? Get yourselves into a 1970s Formula car with a milk churn on the back. Much better. I know you guys want to pretend that you've got a BMW and a Porsche. I don't know why. Terrible vehicles. They're not race cars. You know, you want to pretend that, but if you want to drive, the joy and the power of Assetto Corsa is that you can get in these 1970s cars, and I mean, if this doesn't put a smile on your face, you've got some kind of disorder. There we go, around the outside a bit there. Right, so what I'm going to do now, so you can experience the sound, and so I can concentrate on driving, is I think I'll shut up for a second, and I'll actually focus on the driving, and I'll turn the audio up, so you can see what that's like. If you're still in the mindset of debating whether or not you should pick this car up, you should. £3.50, guys. Hopefully we'll let the car speak literally for itself. Here we go, we'll turn the volume up here and I'll shut up, which is hard for me to do. So, you know, I mean, if that doesn't make you want to get the car, I don't know what would. I mean, what else could you do? What's really of note, actually, is, you know, when you go over the hill in this car, or over, like, a crest, how the back of the vehicle lightens up, and then how you can feel that in the force feedback, and then how you have to then modulate the throttle as to not have the back go flying out. It's really, really fun. There's so many dynamics, physics dynamics that you can pick up, and you can just feel it all through the force feedback. So when you make a mistake, it's kind of obvious that it was your fault. The one thing that does catch me out with this car, though, quite often, is just going into a corner slightly too hot, and especially if it's when it's quite a steep downhill corner. It's quite easy to then just run out of track because you've just gone in too hot and there's nothing else you can get out of the car. You can't brake to get the back end out more. You can't turn more because you've just gone in way too hot. That is the one thing that catches me out. What I did find in terms of... squeeze through here. Bit of a jam. In terms of the actual way to drive this quickly from our limited 6 hours of driving this car, really the key is to getting it set up into into the turn with a slight bit of slide on it, so that then you can use the throttle to modulate the rear of the car and negate the understeer that it can have, which is tricky to nail and really tricky to nail perfectly. But when you start to do it repeatedly, it's like you're getting Project Gotham Racing kudos points. It's really, really satisfying. And I mean, guys, of all cars in AC, like, I could just drive this all day long, especially with this track day mode with just random cars all over the place. It's so fun just trying to work your way through traffic and also work your way through cars, through the track. Traffic and cars, same thing, matey. It's such a fun just little puzzle, just cruising around Nordschleife. And when we were doing the racing with the vehicle in our stream the other day, I'd highly recommend that you download... I see there's some stock 1960s tracks in AC, but I highly recommend you download there's a version of Goodwood that's really, really nice, and it's quite a nice flowy track. Vintage Silverstone is a nice vehicle for this. Vintage Monza, Goodwood, what else? Obviously the Nordschleife that we're on now. I mean, this would be my first track to take it to, if you know it. If you don't know the Nordschleife, I would highly recommend just taking something like a Tatus, the AC Tatus Abarth, around the track loads of times to learn the layout, because it's so grippy. You'll be able to learn it without crashing. There's so many fantastic vintage mod tracks, and I don't think vintage content really gets enough of a shout online. I'm definitely going to be doing more live streams with the vintage stuff in AC, so there's more of an opportunity to drive it. I think for public service, vintage cars are pretty terrible, to be honest, because they require you to already know the brake points and drive very preemptively, especially when there's other traffic and other people driving at different paces. You really have to accommodate other drivers a lot, even with the AI. And it's such a different way of driving compared to modern cars, where you still have to accommodate other drivers, but you know, if they brake a few meters early, you can often react to it. Whereas you have to plan things 300 meters ahead with this sort of car. Look at the cockpit. It's a pure bathtub, this. I think what I might have to do with this car as well is a hot lap session where we try and see who can get the fastest lap time around Nordschleife in this. And normally I'm not a fan of hot lapping, but when you have something that's this pleasurable to drive, it's so intrinsically enjoyable just moving the car around the track. You don't have to be in a race. Trying to like work out if we can, just how fast can you push it through some of these corners. I would imagine that's what the the real drivers were doing to some extent. Unfortunately, when they found out that no, indeed, they had took the corner too quick and they were going to drive into a tree, they would find out in a bit of a fireball. The era of motorsport where you needed lead testes and a few missing brain cells to be able to be quick. Fortunately, we can enjoy the pleasure of the car in a simulator whilst having papier-mâché testes. So, no problem. Fantastic. Look at this. Flow here. Also, a lot of these older tracks, the flow of these older tracks, they don't really make as much sense with newer cars. With vintage cars, it all hooks up. You can really appreciate, oh, that's why those corners were set up like that. With some new cars, you're like, oh, hang on, that corner's a bit boring. That corner's a bit boring. Every corner with a vintage car, it's like, oh my god, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. I'm just gonna put a bit more throttle on and hold the rear out. Oh, also, drifting. This car delivers everything. Cruising, drifting, accidental drifting. You're gonna have to put all your skills together to drive this and get the most out of it. Oh man, look at this absolute jam here. Oh, we scared him off the track. Put the fear of muscle into him. Oh, when you go airborne as well, and you get the force feedback goes light because all the wheels are like in the air, and when it lands in the car and settles, it's all so satisfying. I honestly don't know of another simulator like Assetto Corsa that just has this degree of fidelity with everything. I ain't getting through there, matey. I was going to go for the pass on the right. Ah! Then get out of the way. Right. How dare you slow me up? This car will teach you to be delicate on your brake. It is quite easy to lock up on your brake as well, especially if you're turning whilst braking. You really want to do a lot of your braking in a straight line with this. Get that most of the speed off and then trail brake it and use the trail braking to control it. And very much this car is control it on the throttle and the brake type car, and then just use the steering to stop yourself from exploding. Look at that. Absolutely phenomenal. So, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I could literally just drive this all day long. What a absolutely bloody fantastic mod. And I was saying in the live stream that we did, ultimately, £3.50, I could... Alright. Why not? Why not do a 300 mile an hour 1970s drift from a punt? I was saying, for £3.50, if you just drive this around Nordschleife for 20 laps, you've got your value. I'm a little bit of a fanboy of the RSS content. You got to get there. If you don't want to buy anything, you've got to try their free formula cars. Again, absolutely phenomenal. Well, there you go, guys. That pretty much sums it up. Absolutely awesome, really enjoyable. We've been live streaming it. Make sure you subscribe so you can join in with us next time we do races. Thanks everyone for supporting us. Love this car. Love the work that RSS does. Let me know in the comments if you got to the end of this video. I need to learn how to make quicker videos, but this was just fun. So until the next one, guys, happy tea drinking. Take care. Goodbye. I still got to learn how to do smooth endings. Off we go.